Deebo Samuel decided to give us something to talk about. He went on a radio station. He did an interview he didn't have to do. He got flustered at questions he knew was coming, and he hung up. You watched the video. What'd you think?
Okay. I think it was a disgrace. I think the way Deebo Samuel handled himself was disgraceful, and I'd like to talk about it a little bit, if you don't mind.
Yeah, I'd like to talk about it too.
Okay. Iggy just sent it over to me, and when I say I watched it, I listened to the audio. It was about 7 minutes. Deebo had he was promoting something, a charity or something like that, which is fine, great.
Mm-hmm.
So he was there to promote that, and Zach Gelb, the interviewer, got it right away at the top. He gave him what he needed.
Mm-hmm.
So after that, let's say a minute in, Deebo didn't need him anymore.
Right.
Because he had already gotten his promotion.
Right.
So every question that Zach asked, and they were the obvious questions about Brock Purdy, about Trey Lance. We'll get to the big question in a minute. But he had nothing to say.
Right.
I leave that to Kyle Shanahan. What's more, there was background noise. Maybe you heard it, right? There were other people in the room, so he didn't give this interviewer the courtesy of a quiet room. No. It sounded like children playing or something like that. In other words, he didn't give a shit. He didn't give a shit.
No, he did give a shit enough to promote his own thing. That's how these interviews work. Sometimes I'm sure he got an email from the promoter saying, hey, Deebo's doing something and he would like to do an interview about it. Would you like to interview him about the specific thing? And you say yes, if I can ask him some questions about football afterward. That's how it works. I did this with Joe Montana a couple years ago.
Yeah, and what's more, this guy Gelb was not the only one. He might have been doing 5 or 10 with various outlets. So finally, and what's more, he didn't give Gelb anything. He was lazy. He was not only inarticulate, and it was not only background noise, but he was lazy. He gave sort of Kaepernick answers.
That's how Deebo is with the media. Yes.
I see. If I were there, I would be very angry if I were covering him, and I'd make him very uncomfortable, Iggy.
They don't really present him to the media very much because he acts like that. So when it's time for people to talk on the offense, it's Brandon Ayuk, it's George Kittle, Christian McCaffrey, Trent Williams. Have you ever heard Trent Williams talk to the media, Dad? He talks to us like we're the feds. He comes in, he's like, hey, how you doing? Great to see you. How you doing? It is good to see you. He knows our names. It's like so on top of everything. Does he like us? I don't know, but he wants to be in the Hall of Fame. He knows he's going to be in the Hall of Fame. Only thing that could keep him out is if the media decided they didn't like him. So we all love him because he wants us to. Like, Deebo, you can't figure that out. That's your best friend on the team, man. Listen to him and how he talks to the media. Trent.
Well, I heard. Okay, but let's get back to Deebo. Then finally, what happened was this poor guy, because I've been in that situation as an interviewer. You got a dead dog on the other side who's not giving you anything, and this Gelb had to work so hard.
It's live.
And it's live. And Deebo wasn't giving, and he'd say a good answer. Let's move on. Finally, he asks him about his quote after they got beat by Philly, that if Brock had played, they would have won. And in a way, it wasn't fair. Was something like that, Iggy?
Mm-hmm.
And so Deebo hung up on him. Hung up.
Yeah.
I mean, he couldn't even answer the question. He should have known. He should have thought about it in the last several months. He should have been prepared. And the question was not hostile. It gave him a chance to express his point of view, but he was too intellectually lazy and too condescending to express or even think about a point of view. So he hung up like a baby, because he couldn't handle it. So what I would say, what he did was very bad. And I come back, is that how you want to represent the San Francisco 49ers? These are the goddamn 49ers. And you have one of the best players can't answer a question like that and hangs up the phone. I want to vomit.
Yeah, like, who do you think you are that you're not going to get that question asked? Like, you've had one great year in the NFL. What questions are they going to ask you, man? This is a national interview. People don't know you that well. You play on the West Coast. You've had one great year. You haven't won anything. They're going to ask you about this. You said this. You opened your mouth last year, you and a bunch of your teammates. A lot of people said that's a mistake because it's going to follow you around the rest of your life unless you win a Super Bowl. It's been 6 months. It doesn't go away. You said this. Now stand on it. If he asked you about it, don't say, I don't want to talk about that anymore. No. You opened your mouth. You said it. Stand on it. Don't back away 6 months later. You can't do that.
It makes him seem like a coward, Iggy, and
It's
it
a
makes
weak
him
move.
seem weak. And then what happened? He hung up, and you know the PR
That's
people.
another
I
weak
don't.
move.
So she says, I don't know who it is. She says, okay, we're good to go. And this guy, Zach Gelb, the interviewer, says, good to go. I already have him. So she's lying. In other words, he went, not we're good to go. Good to go would mean we're starting. She should have sent, we're good, he went. And Zach Gelb was disgusted by how she tried to spin it. Now, I don't know this lady. She may be very nice, but the whole thing that the 49ers presented was not what the 49ers are. It's some schlock team, not this organization. The New York Yankees don't operate like that. I bet the Dodgers don't operate like that. The Giants don't San Francisco
The 49ers
Giants
don't operate like that. Deebo operates like that. And it's how he operated last year. He had the great year in 2021. He was selfless. He changed positions. He put the team on his back. He carried them. And then in the offseason, he acted like he was really special. He requested a trade when he didn't get what he wanted right away. He came into the season overweight. And then they essentially replaced him. He was the wide back on the team, and they got Christian McCaffrey. They don't need him to play wide back anymore. They need him to play wide receiver. He is not the focal point of this offense or this team anymore, and yet he acts like he is. He doesn't practice in the offseason, even though McCaffrey does. Ayuk does. Ayuk and McCaffrey practice every single time. They're in midseason form all year. Deebo isn't. Deebo gets out of shape, gets into shape, gets out of shape, gets into shape, doesn't practice. I don't know who he thinks he is. He's a guy who had one great year. And so when he blows up on this guy on the radio, it's like, as an isolated incident, it's kind of funny and silly, but it's like, no, that's just Deebo Samuel. That's Deebo being Deebo.
Now, when you say he doesn't practice, you mean doesn't practice with the team?
Yeah, like in mini camp, he showed up, didn't practice. In OTAs, didn't practice. Like he's one of the elite. He doesn't need to be out there, but McCaffrey is.
Yeah. His attitude, Iggy, is very bad. And I'm going to say another thing.
Yeah, it's been bad.
In the teams that I covered, I covered a lot of them, but early on with Bill Walsh and George Seifert, they would not have accepted behavior like that.
No.
You have a standard. You're the 49ers. You have a standard. You don't act like a punk. You don't act like a baby and hang up because you got your knickers in a twist.
McCaffrey wouldn't. Kittle wouldn't. No. Juszczyk wouldn't. Warner wouldn't. Kyle wouldn't. I mean, no one else in the team would do that. It's a bad look.
I have something else to say, and this is a more general observation. When I was a young man, I would often be critical of players and teams I covered. Some of them weren't good, and I'm a New Yorker, and I'm feisty. No one ever questioned whether I had the right to criticize them. They may have questioned my criticism. Lowell, you're an asshole. Whatever. But no one ever questioned that it was my job as a columnist to be critical at certain times. Right. I think there are certain players on this 49er team, Armstead would be prime, who actually questions the job.
Right.
I think he thinks you're sort of a lowlife. I think he's actually said something like that.
He said so. Yeah, he said so.
Yeah,
Deebo won't answer my questions either. He blocks me on Twitter. They're very similar.
So the two of them, they think you're a lowlife, not because you've done anything, you've never been arrested. I mean, you're a good guy, but because you criticize them.
No, they think media are like parasitic by nature. I think that's how they feel.
Yeah. And
so don't do interviews then. Don't talk to us.
Yeah,
don't talk to us.
What's more, my attitude is I don't need you. If Joe Montana was angry at me that week and didn't want to talk to me, I could still write about Joe Montana. And if I needed comments, I could get from other people. So the point is, they question the whole job of journalism.
Right.
They question journalism because they feel that they're actually above criticism.
Right.
They're different kinds of human beings than the rest of us.
And they're so difficult. They're so difficult with interviews that they're really only interesting when they don't answer questions.
I agree. And Kaepernick was the forerunner of that.
Go ahead. Don't answer my question. It'll be the best part of the interview.
That's right.
The words you use, all that stuff. Like,
all that stuff. So this attitude that they feel that journalism has no place. We are in fact the intermediaries between the readers and the fans and these people, and that we're inherently systemically corrupt.
Yeah.
Wow, because you're not allowed to criticize Deebo or this Armstead guy.
But I
I,
just think
I
it's
find
interesting.
it
Like
ludicrous.
Debo is one of the highest paid players in the team. He should be a leader. There's ways you act if you're a leader, and he doesn't do it. Ayuk does it. Ayuk's the leader of the wide receiver room, not Debo. McCaffrey's the leader of the offense. Kittle's the leader of the offense, not Debo. And what's interesting is 2 years ago, he was carrying the offense. He was the most valuable player on the team. Now, you could argue they don't need him anymore. As soon as they got Christian McCaffrey, between McCaffrey, Kittle, and Ayuk, they're good. What the hell does Debo do that those guys don't do? And he makes the most money, and he's hurt a lot, and he's not always in shape. He went from being essential to being superfluous. And now they got to figure out a way to use him. Like if he has another year this year like he had last year, they're trading him. That's where he's at. So it's a big year for him.
Iggy, the way he acted, usually I feel pretty neutral about
Mhm.
players. I would have to say I'm not in his corner anymore, the way he acted. I'm a journalist, and the way he treated that guy was terrible. Iggy, I want to say one other thing about leadership. I've told you this story, but it resonates with me. When poor Dwight Clark died, they had a service at that big temple, I was going to say, church in the city. And then we went across the street to the Fairmount, and there was a whole big room, and a lot of very famous people were there. And Steve Young was there, and Terrell Owens. And Terrell, he's always battling with some problem or another. And I think at that time it was whether or not to go to the Hall of Fame to receive his that. Well, I was standing there, and he and Steve were talking to each other. He went to Steve, and I think they were talking about that. Iggy, I told you, Steve put his hands on Terrell's shoulders. He
Mhm.
pulled him close, and he was looking right in his eyes, maybe 6 inches away, and he was lecturing him. And Terrell wanted it. And I told you, and you said he's always a quarterback. He was
Yeah.
a quarterback in that room showing leadership. Can you
Yeah.
see Deebo doing that?
No.
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 Steve
No.
Young is still the quarterback to the players he played with.
Look,
Deebo, he wouldn't have even listened to Steve Young.
I'm going to try to be generous to Debo because we just really were hard on Debo for about 12 minutes. Debo a month ago came out and really was critical of himself at that interview, which was really interesting. A lot of players wouldn't do that. He was right. I was terrible last year, and he went into it. I don't think he's a bad guy. I think he's immature. Although having that level of honesty about yourself is kind of mature. But when he requested a trade in freaking March last year, like a lot of people had his back, but like that was immature. Come on, have some patience. It's going to work out. And then this like hanging up on an interviewer, there are 8 different ways you can handle that are more mature than hanging up because it only makes you look childish. So with Debo, I just feel like he's a little immature, but maybe I was when I was 26 too. I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah, you weren't
Eh,
as famous or rich as he is,
no,
and
but
you didn't
but
have
I'm
hold
no.
hold on, and you also didn't have all the PR staff behind you to tell you how to act and all of that. He's got a lot
That's
of
what I don't
benefits.
get. You could have said, "Look, we're going to do the interview, but don't ask me about the Philly game." Like you didn't
They
see
could
that
have done.
coming. They do that. Players do that all the time. Coaches do that all the
Yep.
time. We'll do this interview, but what questions are you going to ask? Or don't ask about this. And if you
Yeah,
do, we won't do the interview. Well, how did you
that's
not do
right.
that?
And yeah, right. So I got to say, Iggy, it's not only the hanging up; it was his lazy attitude.
Unprepared.
Unprepared, sloppy, intellectually dishonest. No, I'm harder on him than you are,
Fair.
and it's nice. You're a nicer
Fair.
person than I am.
No, I just do remember him doing that a month ago. I appreciated it. And I remember thinking, this isn't a guy who necessarily hates the media because look what he's doing for us right now. He's giving us this great moment of introspection. It's just maybe a guy who has some growing up to do. Some growing up to do.
hmm
I don't know.
If I was writing a column about him, I'd shove it up his ass.
I think you just did.
Okay, well, good. Let's move on.